Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're here today doing a bit more streaming of development on the Nexus Mods app. The streams tend to be fairly chill. Today we're going to look on load ordering. And this window here needs to be resized, doesn't it? Work on load ordering today, which tends to be a not so chill experience, but it's gonna be fun. So what we're trying to work on is a system where games can expose a certain set of things that need to be sorted. So we'll be working today on Cyberpunk, and in Cyberpunk the things that you could sort, at least the ones we're working on today, are the red mods. We will be providing an interface to expose those to the UI and the ability to sort those as well. I think we'll start by going into, and once we build out that framework, then we can look at adding the ability to do things like show it on the UI, more metadata, that sort of thing. I think we're going to start by going into our abstractions for the games themselves. So we have a diagnostic emitter, and we're going to have an sortable item provider. We may workshop the names of this. A sortable item provider is kind of a generic name. But it'll work for now. And then we're going to also have an interface that's an iSortable item. So the idea is that each game will be able to present one or more of these objects that can expose sortable things, and we'll provide methods on these. So first of all, give it a name. A group name. So in this case, it would be something like if it's a ESP file in Skyrim or something, that would be the name. The group name is the mod it's a part of, right? This is just metadata that we'll want on the UI. But what's really important is this int sort index. And it's a question then, I guess, if we actually even need the names here, because let's start with the basic level of functionality and expand it later to provide the user interfaces and that sort of thing. So we'll start just with the sort index. And then we have a couple functions that we want on this. So one of them is to set a relative position. And what that means is, like, if we're at item 10 and we want to move it up one, we would do a negative relative position to go one direction and a positive relative position to go the other. We'll start. Let's just start with just the relative. I like doing this when I design things. It's like, yes, we're going to want absolute position, and we're going to want the ability to bulk update these sort of things, but we're also going to kind of want to not worry about that right now, right? So what we want an ID, we want something here to identify this as being unique. Some sort of primary key. Most of the time, this will be an entity ID from the database. I'm trying to think if there's any situation where it would not be an entity ID from the database in any of our games. And I think in almost all times we will have the ability to have an entity ID. So we will pull that in. This is used as the unique identifier for the entity. moves. So set relative position moves the item relative to other items by the specified and we'll rename this instead of index to delta because it's a distance it's going to move, right? Sort distance index is the index of the item in a sorted list of items as given by the provider. And it would probably be good to have an public sortable item provider. So this allows us to traverse back up the tree to the provider that created this. So this is an abstraction for a sortable item that can be moved around in the list relative to its siblings. Yeah, it works. All items in the list will have a non-gapping sort index. If a item is moved, the other items will adjust to compensate for the position change. So what we're saying here is if we have an item at 10 and we move it up one, we're not just going to take its position of 10 and make it a 9. We're also going to go and find whatever is 9 and make it 10. So that the items adjust in the list. Provider that contains all the items that we sort. Yep, okay. So the sortable item provider I really don't want to inject observable collections this deep into the data model, but maybe that's unavoidable. We'll start with it and see if we don't like it later. So this is a read-only observable collection of sortable items. A provider of sortable items. These are often things like game plugins or or mods that the game can load. Natively. Okay. All right, so we have these sortable items, and the next thing we'll want to do is build this out, and we'll start with Cyberpunk. And there's probably going to be some sort of abstract class that we'll build with this too. But we have Red Engine. So in the case of Cyberpunk, the engine itself has these things called red mods that are recognized natively. And so we'll make one called a red engine, a red mod sortable item provider. Now, what is interesting about this is that this will need to be scoped by a loadout, not just by the game itself. So originally I was thinking today that we would hang this class off of the Cyberpunk 2077 game. But the game is the model that represents the entire game, all installations. The game install is a class that, an installation that represents the actual installation, like from Steam or GOG or something like that. Neither of those are loadout based. This is going to be kind of the first time that we add information to the loadout itself. Like we're actually extending the concept of the loadout in this case. So I think what we need is on the game, we'll have to add a method to get this sort of thing. Which is fine. Because we do want this sort of thing fairly abstract. Like we don't want to build an entire UI specifically around red mod creation. And so what we'll do, red mod sorting, right? So what we'll do is we'll need to extend the game to have a list of providers. Let's do that first of all. Game. And just as a really simple solution. So we do have diagnostic emitters here. Sort providers. So we'll be able to get providers for a given loadout ID. Get all the sortable item providers for the given loadout. We're going to kind of just drive this through to completion, write some tests, and we'll think about in a bit how we may want to improve this interface. So this red mod sortable item provider takes a collection, or it takes a connection, iConnection. So we need a database connection for this, and a loadout ID. And what's kind of interesting is that this will actually need to be live, because we'll add new mods to this and the mods will pop up and show up in various places. So this collection, this thing is going to need to have some dynamicism. Dynamicism? I think that's the word to it. Which will be a little weird. All right. So, and we'll save off the connection so that we can use it a little later. All right, so now that that's done, we do need to create the guts for connecting to these items. As I mentioned, this is a live object. We're gonna, like, as in changes come into the database, we're gonna need to change the observable collection. This is feeling more and more like a UI interface, and kind of how it's all going to be working in live. And I'm not sure that I like that this deep into the back-end code. And so it might be a good thing to back up a bit and build it into the models themselves first. So in our models, what we have is red engine loadout group. So what we can do is add another attribute here that says uint. We do have a uint 32 attribute, do we? We do not. Okay, so let's go to our attributes and add a int attribute, a uint attribute. I mean, the other question is, do we need this as a uint? Would we ever? We'll do a uint. It's not worth thinking about if the extra overhead's worth it at this point. So, string namespace string name. This is going to be a scalar attribute of uint value type is uint 32. And the namespace and the name. All right, cool. So now we just need to implement the methods for this. One of these days I should actually abstract this scalar attribute. We could just do that now. Class. Non-converting scalar attribute. I keep writing. Oh, actually, we can't do that because we have to override the correct methods for this. So, never mind. We have to provide these methods for every attribute that we do. Override from the level uint. There we go. Cool. Little doc string on this. Yeah, it's pretty clear what this is. Okay, so now we go to our loadout group. And we want to put this uint32 attribute on it. Sort index. Order in which this red mod should be loaded, relative, other red mods. Okay. Now, this will not be optional. We don't need it indexed. I think we're good. If we build this, we're likely going to get some errors because wherever we create these red mods is not properly going to sort. Yeah, and let's actually modify this iGame so that we don't have our new method in here. Yeah, we don't want it breaking other bits of code. Yep. Items. We'll just stub that out for now. And we'll probably see that when these, yeah, sort index must be provided. So the default index that we would always want on these would be the highest. But I think what we'll do is we'll start it off with 0. And then we're going to need a cleanup function after this to actually sort these. I mean, I think we can get the max sort index for the loadout. Here. I guess we do that. So inside of this method, we do have the loadout group. We have the actual loadout. So let's create ourselves a helper class. Sortable items, helper. We'll rename this class after a bit. But for now, it's just public static uint next sort index. That's not what I wanted. So loadout read only. Loadout. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through all of the items in this loadout. We're just going to do like a return loadout dot. I have no idea what this song is. Downloaded some playlist and like stuck it in here. All right, so items. Yeah, so we're gonna get items, and we're gonna get the max sort index. So not items dot we want to get any of the items that have this attribute. So I guess what we do is we want to kind of we're going to do it as a for loop. Because we need to filter this group too. I mean, this is kind of right. We can just do children here, or items. So for each item, we're going to do red mod loadout group dot try get off of the item. So we're going to get the item. We try to get it as a loadout item group. No, so with group dot sort index, and then this will be the index. So if we have the index, we'll get it. There. This works. So what we do want to do is make the initial value 1. So we want the indexes to start at 1. 1 indexing, really? Gives us, using 1 indexing will give us a little bit of an ability to make sure that if we have an unset value, like a 0, if we have an undefined value, will show up as a 0, in which case we'll know there's an error. Starting at 1 helps a little bit there. And it really doesn't matter, because we're just going to sort these things anyway. So when we install this, what we're going to do is get the sortable items helper, and then do the next sort index. So that should work. We could still end up with duplicates. So we will need the ability to eventually rectify that. Like, we could have duplicates and there'll be something that loads that data up. It's like, hey, ooh, we have a problem there. Now, when we deploy, when we run the red mod tool, what we'll see is that when we run this, we have to deploy red mod. I don't like music that sounds too familiar because sometimes it makes me, stop and listen to the music, and there's musical motifs in this that remind me of Pumped Up Kicks, and it's like, is this a foreign version of that? No, I don't think it is. It's just shares some musical tones with it. So this, what I'm trying to see is if this handles, oh, this is just make sure that it deploys correctly. Oh, it calls deploy, but it doesn't pass in the parameters. So we will need to update this to make sure that it in fact passes in all the parameters that we're looking for. So we can test this on Windows. Okay. So this file, by the way, is a little helper to make sure that it works with Python or Proton tricks, and we're not passing in all the parameters to this, but that's fine. Let me see here what the best way is to pull this up. Give me a second. I'm going to pull up a terminal. I am just pulling up. Okay, so what we have here, I can go back. I was just making sure. I didn't know it was going to come up in the terminal here. So if we go into bin, we can see we have redmod as a tool here. If we do help on that, forget that I'm using PowerShell, which has. So deploy just takes this thing. Do they actually, can we do redmod deploy help? Because there's two ways of passing this information into deploy. Oh, that definitely wasn't what would give us the help, and I don't know if they have. Yeah, they don't have a way of doing this. Great. Let me look this up in a different window here. Redmod deploy. So there's two ways to pass in arguments to redmod. One is on the command line to just list off the mods in the order, and the other is to put them in a file. So where is the... So we can see here that we can deploy just saw it. Why am I missing it? Here we go. So we can do the mod parameter. Commands deploy. Is this what I'm looking for? Here we go. So we can either give it mod name or mod list. And I don't think it's defined. It just says loadoder.txt. I assume it's the same format. It's just one per line, but I do love how the docs here are just like completely non-descriptive. It's just like if you provide the parameter mod list, then you can hand it a loadoder.txt file. And it will load the mods from the file instead. Great. Are they comma delimited, new line delimited? I assume it's white space delimited, but you know, who knows? Do we need to quote them? You know, that's the other question. I'm going to assume for now it's new line delimited and all that. Okay, so let us go back here. When we deploy using this execute method, we need to give it additional arguments, which is the file name, and we also need to write out this file name. I assume we do have a temporary file manager. Yes, we do. Cool. So var load order file equals the temporary file manager dot create file. We're just gonna create a temporary file. This should get cleaned up later on. And then we will need to write this out. Say await write load order file. So the process we need to go through is, let's just document this out. The process is as follows. 1, get all red mods from the loadout. Remove all red mods that are not enabled. Or parent, can't type today, is disabled. And then, once we do that, we can sort the red mods by their sort index, write the red mod names to the load order file. Now, another interesting problem here is it's not clear to me if the name of the file. Okay, so this is interesting. This is important. It says stage only the mods in the given directory names without the leading mods /. So we have to make sure that we write out the folder name and not the actual mod name. So internally in the red mods, they can have a name like Halgari's hand grenade, and that would have apostrophe S, but you may not want the apostrophe S in the actual file structure. So we got to make sure we use the actual folder name. The user, in addition, could rename the mod inside the mod manager to Billy's hand grenade, in which case it would still be in Halgari's hand grenade subfolder, and we want to use that name, not the one in the database. So that'll be interesting. I think we can get to that pretty easily. All right, so let's go through this process. So write out the red mods to the load order file using the folder mod name. Okay. So next thing we do is, yeah, we're not going to do it like that. That's kind of a weird way that they're going about doing that, and I don't necessarily want to do that way. Let me change this a little bit. So items, let's do it this way. Of type We can't do it this type of type, is it? We can do that of type loadout group of type. And we do need to improve how we can do queries like this. It's one of my complaints about how we work with this system, with our database. So we have of type red mod loadout group, where the group dot is enabled. We should have an is enabled. Do we not have that? Where is that at? We use that in the loadout synchronizer. File is enabled. Oh, it's on this, right? Okay. This thing here, a loadout synchronizer. I would like to put this instead. We could put that on the group. There's some type conversions that makes that difficult. Where we're just going to copy this for now. Red mod is enabled. So this is a red mod loadout group. So we get as loadout item group dot as loadout item. So we get this and all its parents, and any of those that contain this disabled thing are disabled. So it's kind of an inverse of logic here, where if this thing or any of its parents contains the tag disabled, then it's disabled. But we want all the enabled things, so we take that and then flip it around and you know, and from a false to a true. So red mod. So we want those where this is enabled. Actually, we can do this. Good. Okay, and then we want to. So we have all the enabled ones. Order by. Red mod. Why does this say info file sort? There we go, sort. So we want to sort it by the sort index. And then for each one of these, we want to take the file. So this is what's kind of cool about this is we have this group, and from the group we can move up. We can go to the file, and then from the file itself, we can get the to name as loadout file dot that's the hash. What is this? This should be a red mod info file. Does red mod info file loadout file, which is a target. Sorry, the class structure in my head is a little off. As target. So now that we're going to get the red mod info file, we're going to cast that as a loadout file. We're going to cast that as a file with a targeted path because that's the way the model here works. And then we get the target path itself, get the relative ID off of that. And then once we have the relative ID, we can get, so let's encapsulate this. Let's see, refactor, extract method. We're going to extract this method, red mod folder. So what this will do is, given a red mod loadout group, this will allow us to get the folder on disk that it contains. So we can get the group, but actually what we have here at this point is we're going to rename this red mod info file. So this is the info file path. And then we got to get the parent of that path to be the directory that that file is in. And then that gives us the parent path itself, the parent directory. And then we're going to take that and get just the last part of that, which is the name. A little convoluted. We should, we'll document this. So get all the red mods. Only want the enabled red mods. Order by sort index. Get the folder file name. So mod le so no, here we go. So my mod instead of mod my mod info.json. Right, there we go. So that's what we want. So we're gonna, so you can kind of see what's happening here. The file, the info file we're getting is in mod my mod info.json. We are finding the directory that this file is in, which is mod my mod. And then we're getting just this last part here. Just that part of the name. And what we have now is an IEnumerable of relative paths. So now that we have that, does that actually work? That does. Oh, that's beautiful. I love it when we've created methods in the past that kind of help you. Like I can just say write all lines async and hand it a bunch of strings, and it's just gonna put that right into a file. I don't have to open the file and close it and all that. Abstraction's a beautiful thing. Okay, so that writes out the load order file. I think I actually want to expose this method. We might be able to test it. Whatever happens, we want to test this method. And I think we can by handing it a loadout, handing it a file, and make sure it writes out the file in the correct format. So once we write the load order file, we have with arguments. And if we look back up here, the method we need, or the other argument we need, is mod list equals this thing. So mod list equals. Now the problem with what I just wrote here is there could be spaces in this path. I don't know if this escapes the spaces, but it should. Creates a copy of this command. Oh, we have an escape here. So I think we do want to escape. Argument takes a enumerable of arguments. Right. So that should work. We'll have to deal with the Linux version later on, which is down here. Okay. Let's do some tests, shall we? We do have tests already that install red mods. So what we just need to do is leverage that Let's see our installers. Mod installers, red mod installers. Let us see what sort of tests we have for Cyberpunk. Okay, so we do have these two inline data files already. That's good. So I was looking for where the resources we were loading up there are actually stored, and as it turns out, I was looking at the wrong. I'm still looking at the wrong project. It's all collapsed there. Okay, games. Red engine. Here we go. Resources. So we have one mod, a thing with one mod and a thing with several red mods. So we can actually install both of these and make sure that it works properly. So let's add another test class here, and we're going to call this red mod deploy Sorry, I got a message there. Reach my wife real quick. Cool. All right. All right, so let's make a new class. That's where we're at here. And what we're going to do is call this red mod deploy tool tests. And then like this method here, I don't think we want to go from a library and no, we want to do this a Cyberpunk isolated game test. Cool. Async task. Deploying. Let's see. Load order file is written. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to first of all create a loadout. As that said, I forget if this, I don't think this creates a loadout for us. I think we have to create it manually, which is fine. But we create a loadout, and then we want to install a couple of red mods. So we'll go back to our red mod installer here and just copy this code over from this test and modify it slightly. So we'll want to register a local archive here. I'm just going to copy this wholesale, and then we'll create the loadout first. So our files are going to be this list of files here. So we'll have first one mod and then several mods. Syntax here messes me up sometimes. So we'll have several files, and what we'll do each time is, for each of these, actually we could just we'll do this for now. We'll get the full path of that file. We need to register the local archive, which is actually part of that other installer. What I'm fighting here is I don't quite have the right test I want to test this. We have this register local archive method here, which we really should have in the other test anyway, so we can add it there. Actually, is there anything about this? Nope, we can shove this up higher into the isolated game test, which we will do. This is really just a case of the hierarchy of test classes being wrong. So this method was in the side class, and we just moved it up to the parent class so that we can use it here. Okay, so we register the local archive, and likewise, in the installer test, we have the install method. We have install here. I don't want a specific installer, I just want a installer used for this. So I guess we can just do await library service dot install item library archive into the loadout, and this is complaining because library archive is not an library item, but as library item. Cool. Okay, so this will install both those files. And whatever is in one, the mod 1, should be first, and whatever's in several should be second. So what we're going to do now is red mod deploy tool. And we want to make the internals of this project visible to our other project. And I don't think we've done that yet. And I forget how to do it, but we're going to try to wing it. Item. It's not an item group. All right, let's look it up. Let's see. Just internals visible to in the property group. The item group. I don't know the difference. We'll do it. Internals visible to. I want to say that's right. Reload the project. Does it? Stop complaining. Oh, I have this junk here. Load now. Nope. I don't think it goes in the item group. It has been way too long. Since I've done this, and I can't remember. You know what we can do? We use this in other places. Let's just do edit, find in files, internals, visible to. It's like this. Internals visible to include. Okay. Keyboard stopped working there for a second. That looks right. Oh, I guess did it finally load here? Oh, I think it finally loaded. Okay, it was just in the middle of doing stuff. Okay, cool. So now what we can do is go back to our tests and say dot. Well, I don't think we can actually use the private method of that. But we can do redmod deploy tool and make this protected, or at least internal. And that's not static, is it? So we need to get that first. Deploy tool equals service provider get required. And then we do deploy tool dot write load order file temp file. So we'll create this temp file. We'll write it out. We need our loadout, so loadout dot rebase. What's this complaining about? Oh, the path is first. Cool. And then we'll await this. And then await, verify that temp file dot path dot read all text async is what we expect. All right, so probably gonna need some verification of this, but we'll see what happens here. So this is load order file is written correctly. Okay. Wait for it to start. We don't have a load order tool registered. What registers that? Oh, this is registered as an iTool. So as we go back to our tests here, of type, cool. So we'll make sure we get all the tools and then we get the specific type we're looking for. But apparently installed correctly because we got all the way down to that. All right. Cool. So what we have here is this. At the top, we have the one mod that was installed first. it only has one red mod. The others are stripped down mods of the mod I wrote, Maestros of Synth. And we can see that the one came first because it was sorted first, because it was the first to install. And then we have the others after it. So I think it's actually working. And those are the correct names for the folders. So we will accept this. This testing system we're using is called Verify. I actually highly recommend it if you're using C#. I'm really, really loving it. But what it does is you can have it output data, or you hand it data, and then it saves that data off as like, this is the expected output of this test. And then if that output changes, it'll fail the test. So you can see that we right-clicked and did accepted. So that's now accepted. And if we go to our files that we're checking in, we'll see this file here that was created. It says verified. It's the name of the test and then verified at the end. And that means that it's been accepted by us. If we change something in this test, this will break and then we'll have to accept it again. So it's kind of about, it's not so much testing specific outputs as you run the test and you say, okay, this is good. This is what I expected. You verify it. And then in the future, if the output ever changes, you just have to decide if that's a change you want to accept or not. All right, so let's make a PR for this too. Or not PR, a branch. Load order v1. And we're not actually going to call this load ordering inside the app itself, because that means different things, different people. We're trying to workshop the naming on some of that to come up with a better set of words. Words are important. Okay, so we're going to commit this. He now writes out a load order.txt file. Cool. Okay, so what's kind of interesting is that we now have the basics of what we need for load ordering. We can display these mods, or we have the index in there. We could easily query this. And it just kind of becomes a question of how best to maintain this data as we update it. So if we want to move a mod around, whose responsibility is that? How do we expose that information? Because one of the issues we have is that this information does need to be live. Like if we change the ordering, we want another part of the system to be aware of that change. Which makes it a little interesting. I do feel like we're dealing with two different constraints here. We have the data backend that just says, here's a list of things that can be sorted, here's our IDs, and here's methods to call to sort them. And then in the front end, we have something different that's like, okay, we have these IDs, we know they're red mods, so now let's display information specific to those red mods. So I do feel like we need obviously we need this provider that we were working on earlier. Like the sortable item provider. But I don't think we want to inject all of this front-end specific information into it yet. I think we want to expose this a little differently. So if we look at our sortable item provider, has these sortable items. At a really basic level, this is all we want. Is like, what is the index? What's the entity ID of the thing? And how do we change the position? So I don't agree with this items observable collection I have here, because that's like injecting this auto-updating, changing dynamicness into the back end of this. So I think we change this interface to just be, and I also think that we make this a little more generic. We're like public, an IEnumerable of iSortable item, get items, and we get that for a specific loadout. This will allow us to test this whole interface, and we may end up needing another override for this for getting an observable set of these things. But I think I'm okay with that. Yeah. Now this will be the manipulation side of this API. So we're actually not going to sort these by enabled versus disabled. One of the things in our design is that, yes, if the mod is disabled, we won't write it out to the load order file, but we're still going to track its position. We're basically going to track all the positions of all the sortable items, regardless of if they're enabled or disabled. And you're like, well, why? Well, because if you disable it and we remove it from the list and you do a bunch of changes, then you enable it again, where does that thing go? You know, like, do you sort it according to the where it was used to be? We're going to workshop that a little bit, because we have some other options there that I haven't thought about until now. Like we could go back into the history of that item and find out when it was last enabled and what its position was relative to other items at that point, and then put its current position back where it was. That actually would be kind of interesting. But I want to think about that one. So for now, we're not even going to worry about enabled versus disabled in the context of the editable side of this. The other thing is, when we set this position, we do want this to be a task. So we're going to code this up just so we can test and make sure all of this behavior works as we expect, but we may come back later and make parts of this observable or something like that. So get all the sort items for the given loadout. So we have this red mod sortable provider. So what this is really just going to be is loadout dot items of type of loadout group type of red mod group type. That's it. Now we also need red mod sortable item. This will be an iSortable item that's going to take a red mod group, loadout group, and we're going to get our red mod provider. So the sort index is going to be the group. The sort index here actually is going to be a uint. The entity ID is going to be the ID of this thing. And then when we set the relative position, this is where all the fun happens. So I think actually what we could do is do provider.set relative position of us. So we're going to delegate this to the parent. Okay, and then just to fix this error, we're going to create a new item there. Cool. So what we need to do, essentially, thinking of the best way to do this, because this is going to be fun. So what we have is we have a list of items, sortable items, and we want to move this thing up by a specific number of index, right? So let's write this down again. So the order, okay, by the way, I absolutely love this about Copilot. I apparently am such a terrible coder that its default response, if I type comments and just let it do something, writes, "This is a hack, but it's the only way to do it for now." This happens all the time in my coding and it cracks me up. I'll be like, this is a really clean implementation, but I'll get into like this is, and it just writes out a horrible, terrible thing. It's a hack and you are, this is bad and you should feel bad. I'm like, come on, man. Okay, so what we're going to do is start by get all red mods, red mod groups. Get the index of the group we want to move. And then we do want to get the index to the group that we want to move to. And then, no, we're not going to swap them. What we're going to do is move the index of all the groups in between by 1. Set the index of the group that we want to move to the index we want to move to. Yeah. Okay, this is going to be interesting. So we first of all get all the groups, which is group.loadout. So we get them all. And then we want to order these. Order by the sort index. And then we want to do toList. So we got to get the, we want to get the parent. Okay. So we get the parent dot, not parent, it's the loadout. From the loadout, we get the items. So we're going to we have this group. We want to jump up to its parent. We need to get all the groups within this. I think we actually do have might have a cleaner way of doing this. So they're in a list. So current index. That's not exactly what we want here. So we have group on DX. I'm actually trying to think of a good way to do this efficiently, and I'm not thinking of one yet. So we have the current index of what we can get the current index. And then the new index is the current index plus the delta, right? So what this is suggesting is if the new index is, okay, yeah, so we do want that. If it's moving us out of the range, we obviously can't do that. I actually don't know what Copilot is suggesting here. But we have them in a list, and I'm wondering what would happen if we... Can we just move them in the list? Groups dot remove or move? Is there a move? Because I think we can do remove at the current index. Yeah, I think this works. So we can remove it at the current index, and then we insert it at the new index, right? And then what we do is we sort all of they're sorted. So now we can assign them based upon their index in the in this list. So we're going to create a new transaction, and we're going to do for each group in groups, and this is correct. So there's this cool thing with select where you can give it a second parameter to the lambda, and then the second parameter gets the index of the item in the enumeration that you're doing, which will work for us here. So what we're going to do is we're going to tx.add. Well, actually, we want to say if the group sort index equals the new index, then we're going to just continue. So we don't want to churn too much of the database. Otherwise, we'll do tx.add g.e id, and then we get the idea. We do the red mod loadout group dot sort index, and we put in the new index ID. And this is not liking this. Yeah, it's not a references attribute. It's a what? Oh, this isn't a uint. We need to cast this to a uint. There we go. So we're going to do that update and then await commit async. And this is complaining. Oh, I should fix that one of these days. Commit async versus commit. All right. So after this move happens, we would get a new enumeration. Users of this class would want to get a new enumeration of the items. So let's document this a little bit. So get all red mod groups for the loadout. Get the current index of the group relative to the full list. Get the new index of the group. Make sure we don't go out of bounds. Remove it from one place and insert it in the other. Now, I'm not sure if this is actually going to work because I think there may be weird cases where we would say move it to one position. Like if you have a list and you take an item out, the other items after it in the list shift. And so it may be a weird thing where it won't quite go back into the spot we expect. We may have to modify how we do this remove at and insert. Okay. We have an issue here. Sort index should be int. Yeah, I don't know. We may We may unify this on an int versus unit. At any rate, so let's go back to our tests and see what those look like. So let's make ourselves some helper methods and stuff for this, right? So one of the things we're going to do here, first of all, is turn this into an explicit constructor. And then our tool, we'll go ahead and call this out so that we don't have to invoke this code every time to get the redmod deploy tool. We can just do it once in the constructor, and that'll be good. Now we can delete this, and okay. So we have one basic test here, but what I want to do next is write ourselves some data-driven tests. And I actually love doing these. So what we're going to do is inline data. Well, it's going to be a theory. Public async task. Moving mods relatively results in correct ordering. Okay. So what we're going to do is this is going to take string name and a int for a delta. So if you remember in our file that we looked at, that we committed here, what's the best way to go about finding this? If we go to we can just look it up right here. Oh, we can do this. I forget that this exists, where we can do open verified. So this is the verified data. So what we're going to do is be able to provide something to this test like driver shotguns, right? That's a mod. And so we're going to say, hey, take driver shotguns, move it down, 3 items. And then that will give us a new verified file that will be able to see that it in fact moved the way we expected. So our tests are going to reflect that operation. So driver shotgun, is it shotguns plural or singular? Let's take a look at that. It is plural. Okay. And so we're going to move that down 3. And that's the wrong test to put that on. Cool. So this is inline data. So we're creating like multiple invocations of this test. It's going to run over and over. The first time it's going to move driver shotguns down 3. Here's another one. Inline data. If we try to move it backwards 3, that'll fail because it's at the top of the list already, right? So it wouldn't necessarily fail. It just wouldn't modify it. So I do want to modify some of this code. We want to have setup. So let's extract this method. Setup loadout. So we have just set up loadout, and then this is going to be the verify. Refactor extract method, and we're going to call this a verify loadout. Now, this is actually going to return a settings task because we're going to need to apply additional information to this settings task. The verify command returns a settings task. And we're going to have some fun with that. We're just going to have this return a string. That'll work. write loadout file. So async task. So this is going to write our loadout file and then return the data that it wrote. And then we can actually, like this temporary file manager will automatically delete that file and close it and delete it when this file method exits. And so that'll be cleaner for usage of this as well. So now we can just do await, verify, write loadout file. Yeah, and we actually don't need the extension or anything on it. We'll just do this. Why we probably want an await here. Cool. Now that we've split out those two parts of this, we can write our actual method. So we can set up the loadout. Now we need to get this provider thing. We can do this for now. We may inject this at a different place later, but we're going to say var groups equal provider dot get items. So the specific group we want is going to be, we're going to go to our loadout and we're going to get items. So this is interesting. We don't actually have access to this name. We need to get the name of the group. Well, for now, we can add it on the red mod sortable item. We can do public string name, and we'll just return the name. Don't know if that's going to work. May work for our tests. So we'll do get our groups of type red mod sortable item where the name equals that thing, and then set relative position of that group by the delta, and then we're going to write the loadout file after we rebase. So loadout equals loadout.rebase. All right, let's see what happens. This is moment of truth, folks. Moving mods. Now, these will fail initially because we don't have any of the verification files. But what we should see is one of these tests result in, well, it'll also die because we haven't added additional parameters to these files yet. Oh, we haven't registered this in our... I've registered this provider. Red mod sortable item provider. Cool. So this driver shotguns delta -3 should result in a file that looks the same. Oh Yeah. We need to change the sortable item provider no longer takes a loadout ID. It just takes the connection. We pass in the loadout to it when we want to get the list of mods to sort. So we weren't able to find anything that matches the name, and that's not incredibly surprising. Let's see, let's poke around in this data and see what we can get to here. So groups, that first. What is groups here? Is this? Oh, this get items didn't return anything. It's kind of odd. Items of type loadout item group. What? Let's yeah, no, okay. I think our get items, did that need a, do we need a reload after this? So we set up the loadout. Yeah, we installed those, but we didn't do loadout equals rebase. So this is like, we have this, our loadouts are immutable. So every time we create a new loadout, if you actually want the new one, you gotta load up the new loadout. It's pretty fast, but it's just a matter of, you do hit some issues like this where you're looking at stale data. So I would expect this, yeah. So the name is correct here on this sortable item. That's good to know. Which means that if we do this, what's the name that we're looking for? Driver shotguns, and it was saying nothing with the name of driver shotguns is in this? It's singular here. Why is it singular here? Don't know. Driver shotguns was the internal name of this, I guess. So we're going to do the same thing we do in the other place and just get that long method of finding the name. This thing here. So we're just going to do this to get the name, which should give us the correct value now of driver shotguns, plural. So we do have a specific group. If we run this, okay, no change. That's good, because we took driver shotguns and we moved it up -3, which is impossible because it's at the beginning of the list. So if we accept that, actually we didn't want to accept that yet because we want to give it extra. Did it have extra parameters on the name of that file? No. Use parameters, name and delta. So if we run this again, it'll fail again, but we'll see that the name of the verified file has these additional parameters on it. And that's important because you can only ever have one verify output from a specific file. So the file now is name equals driver shotguns, delta equals -3. Cool. So we'll accept that. And now if we run this, we should see another file, and we should see this move if it's working correctly. We didn't. So, you know. let's go into this file to see what set relative position actually did. So we would expect current index to be 0. So the current index is actually 2. That's interesting. So what are our groups? We have 12 groups here. We're not filtering this properly. We're getting the items of type load.item group of type. Okay. So the first item look at the actual data. The name is driver shotgun. That's fascinating. So its entity ID is 13. And our group that we're looking for is 13. So why did it not? Oh, because we're getting the sort index. And the sort index here is 2 for whatever reason. And we don't want that. Instead, we want to return the .idx, the index of this thing. So it is interesting that we are having a problem here of the values that we select. So we're sorting by sort index, but I think then we want to actually select a tuple for this group of g.sort index and then g.id. And the reason I say that is so we can say current index is going to be groups.find index of, and we're going to give it that same value to look up the index in the list. It was the question was it moved already? No, I'm not sure. I think it's an off by 1 error that we defaulted to 1 and then something else in the code just adds 1 to it. I'm still not sure about that. But one of the issues there is, we want to insert but really what I want to do is this index of is going to be a lot more optimized because internally the C# routines are just going to be able to more easily find the index. So now our current index is in fact 0. The new index is 3. So we're going to remove we can just run this, but we'll remove at 0 and insert at 3. So that went away a little too quick, but if we compare, let's run this again and we compare the two, we'll see that it actually worked. Yeah, so they may break the accepted test, and it really is a question when you create accepted tests how much of the data you want to expose to the test. If you put too much data in the accepted test, it'll be stuff you don't care about. So like you don't want to put database IDs in there because you don't really care what the database ID is or even like the order in which it was inserted into the database. What you care about is the data itself. So this worked, and I think this is correct because it was at the top and then we moved it down 1, 2, so it was here 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so it's in the correct position. That's good. So there's a couple others that we want to check. So we will accept this. Can I copy this? Oh, I can't do it that way. Cool. Run both of these again, and then I will accept them. And then we'll add a few more test cases. So if we rerun these tests now, should just work. Yeah, that works. So the two cases we have right now is we're already at the top and we want to move down. We're already at the top and we want to move up. Those both work. What I want is another test now where we're not at the top and we want to move up to a valid position. But it's kind of one of those things in situations like this, you want to verify that you can hit either ends of the collection as well as move around inside them. So this one should be able to move up one. So the body heat radio should now be all the way at the top. And it is. Cool. What I was careful of there is to make sure that it would actually, move to the... It wouldn't hit a thing where it's like, oh, the position's now 0 and we can't get it 0 because of some bounds check or something. So the other thing I want to check is if we're here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Can we move this one down 10 to put it at the other end of the list? What happened with the compilation? I had a typo there. Would a test be useful where you try -3 on that one? Yeah, that would be. So that would be a good situation too. I currently don't support in this code the ability to, if you say -3 to just move it all the way to the top. Like if you can only move 2 and you give it -3, would it max out? We can add that, but right now if you give it a movement that's invalid, it'll just not even try to do any of it. Really what this is useful for is that when we build out our UI, the top one only stopped at the top because, yeah, exactly. What really happened with the top one is that it didn't move at all because it would have put it outside the bounds of the list. And really what this is for is we're going to build out a UI where this is displayed and there's up and down buttons and you can just up and down and then drag and drop. But for all of those, we'll express it as, a delta change. Or in the case of drag and drop, it may be absolute. But at any rate, we can verify that this is just at least working. Okay, so we should have all 4 tests here. Oh, I didn't accept this one. So yeah, moving -1 works. And then body heat got all the way down to the bottom because it moved 10. So we will accept all of these. Rerun them real quick. The other thing we'll want to do is make sure that driver shotguns can move down 11 spaces. So that would be moving from one side to the other. And really this is kind of overkill because at this point, I know it's working, but yeah, so driver shotguns goes all the way to the bottom. And then, what was the last one on the list? The dirge. We'll try moving the dirge -11. And -11. So that would make sure that we can move things all the way from the bottom to the top. And then I think that's a good amount of tests here for this. Yep, so the dirge goes all the way to the top. Driver shotguns is now second. Cool. Everything there is working. What will be interesting to note about this is if we go to this set relative position, when we're done, we write out the index. We sort everything, and then we write out its index in that list, which is interesting. It does reset it to 0, doesn't it? I don't know, maybe that's not something we care about. It's really one of those things where the indexes don't matter at all. It's just the relative to other things is what matters here. But every time we sort this list, or not sort, but every time we rectify this list, we're going to do a couple things. This code here does a couple things. First, it removes any holes in the sorting. So if we had 1, 2, 12, 33, it's going to 1, 2, 3, 4 is what it's going to come out as. It compacts all the IDs as well as removes the holes there between them, and resets it all to like 1 through whatever. And all of this doesn't really matter for the UI. On the UI, it's going to be presented completely differently and all that. So that works. That's cool. I mean, I guess something we can try with this is to install a couple mods and see if it actually executes correctly, because we haven't tested that yet. So I'm going to switch the screen over real quick. Just make sure I got some stuff backed up here and get some mods downloaded. Delete the data model stuff I have here. Let me pull down a couple mods. We can switch back to the screen from now. I'm going to pull down that driver's shotgun. Here we go, red mod. I'm going to download a couple of these files and load it into... Actually, I'm just going to download a couple red mods here. I think that would work. What I want to do is just install so if a mod is completely removed and deleted, then it breaks the sorting index, but it won't really matter. And what we'll do is we can add like a rectifier method that whenever we delete a mod or something like that, I mean, it's really not going to matter because like the positions will still be relative. So every time an item's moved, we load them up, sort them, move it, that sort of thing. And that'll be pretty fast. Okay, so I got a couple mods downloaded. Let us log in here. And yeah, on our latest builds, we have Baldur's Gate support, which is pretty awesome. Oh, I think I have a dirty game folder. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to install these mods real quick. This is my personal machine that I work on here, so there's a couple times where it's like, I'm not sure what I'm going to, I want to pull up personal information in the middle of a stream. All right. So let's add this Night City Alive. We'll add infinite attribute reset, so those mods are installed. We have the mods installed here. That's all cool. We should see a bunch of mods. Yeah, so under mods, we have these three things. And so if we hit apply, we should not see an error. So execute command mod list. There we go. It actually executed that. First time you hit red mod deploy, it does take a while, or can. Not the first time when you run red mod is a slow program. Apologies to whoever wrote it. I don't know who that is. I assume this is still running. So I think we dealt with problems around that crashing. There we go. Wow, that's so long. 43 seconds for a red mod deploy. Doesn't look like it errored though, so that's good. I think there's a log file for it. Yeah, I can't type on phones. I have, you know, giant hands. So, okay, so that's where standard error ended up. Let's see. Copy. Switching to this screen. I need to make myself like a safety screen. That didn't tell me a whole lot. So this is what it loaded up, which is just, I probably can't see on stream, it's super small. Just complaining about some syntax errors. I think I had a dirty game folder. But aside from that, I think it's working, so that's awesome. So this is where we get into a bit of a problem. Well, let's commit these changes first of all. And I think there's a couple of unversioned files I need to delete here because we added those parameters. Actually, I'm not seeing it here. I think we deleted it already. Cool. Verify tests for red mod item sorting. Cool. Yeah, even if it's slow, it's better than it is doing nothing. Yeah, and actually, it caches data. So, like next time we deploy, if there's nothing to do, like if we do, well, it's it's kind of a problem here because we do proper diffing of this. So, like, if I do this, oh, we got to deploy. But if I do this, we don't. It's like, well, yeah, because you undid the thing. But like, what's actually happening behind the scenes is we're diffing, and it's like, oh, there's changes. If we didn't apply, we would do something. If we didn't apply, we would not do something. It doesn't look like much to the user, but it's a pretty big thing. Did you get that to work? All right, cool. So I think that works. What we need to do next is build the UI around this thing, which, to be honest with you, I don't really feel like doing right now. Let's look at how we would fit in these observable objects. So what I was talking about before is we kind of have this segmentation of code currently where the back end is pretty UI free and the front end is where we have all of our user interfaces. The front end tends to rely on dynamic data, the actual library dynamic data, but also the concept of dynamic data. Where if you would say something like the system item provider get items, what you're going to get back is a collection, a live collection that's going to update and move as things go, as we get new sortable items. There's a lot of stuff in that around like you got to maintain it. You got to make sure you unsubscribe from it. Yeah, I do need to push a release for Wabajack after work. Tell you the real problem, and this is something we fixed at the Nexus and I'm really happy about, is like doing a deploy of Wabajack is a giant pain because I have to compile it and sign it and then by hand upload it to places and do this all. It's like, it's only 20 minutes, but it's like I have to have a flow. And then when my computer, I tend to reset my computer a lot, like wipe the data. And when I do that, it wipes the certificates. So I have to actually now get the certificates again, reinstall them, and go through that whole process. And it's a giant pain. How we fix that though for the app is it's just all automatic. It's all online. It's like everything that builds gets signed. And then deployment is just like, yep, that's good. Deploy that. Perks of, having 8 hours a day to work on something. But yes, I do need to get that. All right. What makes that thing with Wabajack even worse is we upload it to two places, the Nexus and GitHub, and there's two files for each. So it's like, it's just copy all this stuff. It's fun. So as we were saying, the back end is mostly static methods like this, get items for something. The front end is where all the live code all the live collections update. And I don't really want to inject this whole idea of live collections into the back end. We can create another project, which is what we've thought of doing in the past, so that the back end can remain as is. And maybe that's what we need to do here. I think that might actually be a valid option. So, and we have that already too, don't we? We have Advanced Installer and FOMod, the back-end versions, and then .ui for the front end. I think I like that. It does mean we would like double up on all of this code though. Like we would have iSortable item provider and then observable sortable item provider, which sucks. Maybe it's not so bad. So we would definitely need another class like Nexus mods, games, actually no, abstraction, excuse me. We would need an abstraction class. Like Nexus mods, abstractions, let's start with that. New project, class file, or a class library, Nexus mods.abstractions.games.ui. We're going to put that in abstractions namespace. We're going to call this observable sortable item provider. What a dumb name. I actually do want to make this an iObservable change set of entity ID to some sort of iSortable item. This is what the front end is going to want. And this is going to be fun to code up. You do get better learning from mistakes. So this is actually what I want to build this as. We take an observable of loadout IDs and we get back an observable change set of sortable items keyed by entity ID. And the reason for that is this loadout ID could change, and we're trying to build a lot of the UI in this observable way. So, a lot of times like this, it's like, it may not be super, it's going to be a bit of a bear to code this up, I think, but we're good. Okay, so now, like build your abstraction. Well, I guess what I'm saying there is build your abstractions first. That's kind of like the way you really want to use it, and then see how bad it is to actually code it up once you get to implementing it. So let's do a new project here of Nexus mods.games.redengine.ui. So now we should have this other Red Engine UI project down here. And this will have a class red mod observable sortable item provider. And this is a so we're going to need a database connection for this. I don't know why it said that was the code we wanted there. There we go. Yeah, that might actually be fairly close to what we want. I am slowly working on a better way to do these sort of collections because this is it can be a little inefficient. So if we do loadout red mod what is it? Red mod loadout group. That's what we want. Dot observe all. So we're going to observe all of them. And from the connection, why is this complaining? Oh, because we don't need an ID. So we're just going to observe them all from the connection. It's still complaining for some reason. We didn't actually assign this to a field. Okay, there we go. So we're going to observe all of the loadout groups. And then filter those by observable, where the loadout ID of the group is equal to the loadout we're looking at. Now, I'm not sure, but the efficiency of this is a little strange, and maybe it is fine, but I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. There's things I want to try to do differently with some of this eventually. So we're filtering by observable, and it's saying we can't do that. Cannot resolve filter by observable? What? Filter by observable? Oh, is it on observable? Okay. On observable. And this takes a read-only and returns. Oh, so for a given, what they're going to pass to us is a specific group, and we want to say if we're interested in that group. So we need to either say, we need to return an observable of booleans. So .loadout ID .where or select g dot value equals group dot loadout ID. This is really kind of weird, but basically what this code is doing is we have the whole set of groups, loadout Redmod loadout groups, and we only want the ones that are equal to our loadout ID, but the loadout ID can change. So what this thing is asking for is like a stream of Boolean values. Like it'll give us a loadout group, and then it wants a stream of Booleans back, so that as the loadout ID changes, that Boolean can turn false and it will throw it out of the list. Oh, and this is not at all what we want here. And this change set is backwards in its shape. It's kind of weird. It's object then key for change sets instead of the other way around, which you would expect from like a dictionary. So our value in this case is iSortable item, and the key is an entity ID. So cannot resolve method filter on observable. Candidates are it's expecting a function that takes a read-only group and returns an iObservable of Boolean, which is what we are giving them. But it's saying it can't find group dot group as loadout item group dot loadout item as loadout item dot. There we go. Yeah, that's an ugly piece of code. Cool. Now I would expect that to work. So what's it complaining about now? It says cannot resolve filter on what is the types it takes? Is read only and entity ID. That's what we want. The type checker in C# is a little naive and doesn't actually dig into types as much as it wants, or as much as we want. Let's see. Delegate type could not be inferred. Why not? So this is going to hand us it's going to hand us a group and ID. Like, it still doesn't like that. Like, we want... Okay, let's do this. Oh, filter on observe. I had that wrong. So group. Where loadout ID, select, right, LID, group dot. Brain is slowly frying here. Cannot resolve. There we go. Okay, now this is complaining because our return type is invalid, which is what we'd expect. Yeah, I want to build something around this that does this for us, because this is just crap in some ways. So we'll have to figure this out, because that's incorrect. And the group, this red mod sortable item expects a group, and so I'm not sure why this is getting, oh, because it's a group that needs to be transformed. I mean, it's always going to be this type, so we really should be able to just like group dot as. I don't know if we have an as on this. As loadout item. I'm just mostly trying to get this to actually work. So this works. We need like an explicit cast for this to work the way I'd like to see it work. Okay, so we are transforming this into a red mod sortable item, and this is complaining that cannot convert. We didn't switch the types here. So it says cannot convert from one type to another. Do we need to cast this sortable item? Nope. Cannot convert instance argument, or say instance argument of type read-only entity ID to type change set read-only entity ID. It's the same thing. Red mod loadout group. It can't convert it to loadout item group. Oh, I see. We don't necessarily need these anymore. Cool. And now this is a red mod loadout group, so we don't need the cast here. We can just do group. That explicit cast I put in there was breaking stuff. Yeah, I don't know that we necessarily need this cast anymore either. That all just works. Yeah. We don't need this. I have to fight the type checker like this sometimes. Just because it's like not smart enough to tell me what is wrong, so I can figure out what I need to do. Okay, so now this is complaining that we can't change a sortable item to a sortable item ID. So I think if we put the cast back near. Yeah, that works. Okay. Finally, we got it. I think I will grab some lunch, and then I got some other stuff up I gotta run and do. But this is a good place for now. We are able to get these sortable items. I do think we're going to need an observable sortable item, unfortunately. Perhaps. Well, let's look at that though, because what is the sortable item? The sortable item has a sort index, so we will want to make that dynamic in some way. The index will change over time. Yeah, so we'll want like an observable sortable item thing that exposes, or maybe whatever implements this in the UI systems should actually output. That should do the iNotify property change so we can bind to the sort index. That would work as well. Okay, well, I'm going to think about that. And probably later today dive into the, getting the interface set up for this. Get some, because we've abstracted all this behind these item providers, we can actually prototype moving them around with the, arrows and stuff, and maybe even drag and drop, although I won't do that initially. And that'll allow us to kind of make sure this all works. And then we pretty much would just expose the data that we've already been using in our tests to the UI. And we got load order sorting. I cannot talk today. In Cyberpunk. We're not too far off. All right. Thanks, everyone. It's been great. Probably keep doing this every so often at this time. And yeah, we'll go from there. Thanks again.